Girls and boys, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of In the Eyes of Truth, English edition. Johnny is with us. We met before with Scott Bennett in Belgrade. We had a interview, but they were in Belgrade. I wasn't in Belgrade. I was previously in Zaporozhye, other side of the front line, southwest. But want to discuss a couple things. Johnny's most of the time is in Donetsk, in those areas. Now, for those who haven't heard, yesterday was another tragedy. The Donetsk roulette, as they call it. This time, I'm not sure whether it's Ukrainian or an American missile hit a shopping center in Donetsk.
It was actually a 150. It was actually a 155. So yeah, it's a Western supplied 155. It was actually 155 shells. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's artillery round.
Why, hello there. Come hither, boys and girls, and hear the magical tale of the magic monetary theory. That's right. You no longer have to worry about all that pesky gold and silver to buy what you want. Just print, print, print. And when Marco Polo traveled to ancient China in the 1200s, the Mongol Khans of China showed him their magic monetary theory, where they had pure fiat paper money, and they could just print whatever they needed for whatever they wanted to buy. But alas, even that story had a dark ending. For the magic monetary theory unleashed the twin beasts, the tidal wave of debt ridden by the beast of inflation. And when Marco Polo returned to China 20 years later, there were no Mongol Khans of China anymore. China had just gone through a vicious civil war that was sponsored by a total economic collapse. Let's fast forward 800 years. And the modern monetary theory is all the rage in the Western leadership. That's right, you no longer have to worry about debt. Debt no longer matters. No, just print, print, print all you need. But yet, the twin beasts are back. The tsunami of debt swallows up whole nations, causing defaults, causing collapses in currency, destroying people, destroying their lives. The beast of inflation swallows up your hard-earned wealth. The products that cost $126 back in 22 now cost well over $400 in 24. That's right, hyperinflation is here. What do you do to save your hard-earned wealth? Where do you go? You go to gold, not paper gold, physical gold. And you don't keep that gold in the United States, where in 1932 the government confiscated gold. It'll do it again. You don't keep it in Western Europe that's collapsing before our very eyes. Where do you go? What do? You come to exitstrategy.world, the company that's going to help you find the safe haven for your gold and your well-being. Exitstrategy.world, the saviors in this dark fairy tale.
It was artillery because this shopping center is in Petrovsky and actually 155 can reach. It's about angles and heights and things like this.
Right.
Yeah.
What can you say? You're familiar with that area, as far as I know.
Yeah, of course. I've crossed that a few times, because you drive through Petrovsky to Alexandrovka and other places. Look, it's a purely civilian area. It's a very popular shopping center and a very crowded civilian area. There's absolutely no chance of a misfiring or that they missed their target. Their target was the shopping center. And the problem with Russia that it always downplays the casualties and things like this, because a lot of people that are injured are so on the edge that they probably won't make it. So what we know now still is only about 2 dead and 11 injured, but some of the injured are not going to make it. It's very clear. The shopping center was burned to the ground. It was another. I've watched for 1 year these crimes in Donetsk against civilians, so I'm not surprised at all. Let's say that. I'm not surprised at all that the shopping center would be targeted.
Yeah, that is true, because and it's not just Russia, it's media in general. They say people were injured, and most people think of injured, oh, they got cut or they got abrasion or something like that. They don't think that injury by shrapnel means severed limbs, punctured abdomens, chests, and so on. I mean, these are horrific wounds. A lot of people, yeah, they don't survive, or they lose body parts.
And look, like I say, one of my issues with Russia, it always downplays its suffering, because if somebody just got a bit of glass and cut and had to have a few stitches, they won't even count it as injured. You know what I mean? So it's like injuries are injuries.
Right,
Like
right.
missing limbs, intensive care, stuff like this. It's like injuries. If you got a bit of glass and you had to have the 12 stitches, you're not even in the count. You know what I mean? So
That is an injury. That is a civilian injury.
yeah. I mean, of course, it's a civilian injury, but I'm saying that
Right, right.
Russia always downplays its suffering, and I've always had an issue with it. That come on, you got to show the world what's happening with the civilian casualties. And look, I'm in all the Donetsk Telegram groups, so even when I'm out of Donetsk, I'm in Crimea at the moment. So even when I'm out of Donetsk, I know what's happening every day in Donetsk, and there hasn't been a day in Donetsk since July last year that there wasn't dead and injuries,
Yep.
So it happens every day. This was a big spectacle, so it made it to actually the world news. But usually it's just somebody in the local market, some apartment, some drone dropping something on an old man, and it doesn't even make it to the news. It's like this.
Oh, it's horrible. Absolutely. And,
And
well, let me ask you this.
and Stanislav, I don't know. Yeah.
From your
Go
reporting,
for it.
have you noticed people noticing, or the amount of people picking up or caring?
I think you froze. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Could you hear what I just
Okay.
said? Oh, let me repeat
Yeah.
that.
I think people do care. I mean, I do see, at least the comments I get in my reporting, I would say they're 90% positive
Mhm.
and 10% Ukrainian trolls, So, no, they're really positive. And I would just like to add, I just came for a couple of weeks to Crimea, and the night I arrived in Sevastopol, after a 12-hour drive from Donetsk, I went to sleep at 12 o'clock. And at 1 o'clock, I've woken up, and all the city is on a drone attack. And lucky it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. So all the debris that actually did fall on the roads didn't hit anybody because everybody was inside. You know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
the anti-air meeting the drones and meeting the missiles, and also Sevastopol, it's a civilian city. No, the Black Sea Fleet is not in Sevastopol now. It's been moved. It's not there.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not only in Donetsk, man.
Well, my poor old aunt lives right on the front lines. So she's been getting shelled for her area has been shelled for 10 years now. And it's insane. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, but it continues.
Look, I met many people that have told me that they don't remember a day without shelling in the last 10 years. Like you say, I've been following a story of a little girl called Violetta. So she's now a year and 9 months. She hasn't slept one night without shelling. And it's interesting, I just met her and the mother a couple of weeks ago in Donetsk. And the mother said to me, when it's quiet for a few hours, she's so used to shelling the baby. So when it's quiet, she can't fall asleep. Because we get used to any shit in life. That's how it
Yeah.
is. We do get used to. So let's say if it's a night with only a couple of bombs and things, the child won't fall asleep. She's so used to being under fire that's the familiar sound. So just imagine the healing that all these people are going to have to go through once the war is over. I mean, I personally think it's the whole city is going to have to go through a PDST withdrawal.
I mean, my aunt's in Yasinawata, and that's still front lines, and that's
Yeah. I
one of
know.
her neighbors just got killed 3 weeks ago. Yeah, and that woman's house had been damaged before they repaired it, and then it came in again. My aunt's got a crater in her yard. I came in there. I came in there a couple months ago, and offered to drive them out. They're old. They're like, no, no, we're gonna stay. We can't leave. We got a dog. We got a cow. I'm like, screw the dog, screw the cow. Come on, I'll take you out. Like, no, 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 we're not gonna. Where will we go? My parents were calling them to. It was my late father's second cousin, and they won't go. But yeah, and as you're talking to them, you can hear the rounds coming in. I'm military, so I'm used to hearing rounds. But one of the guys with us was the first time he ever heard artillery, especially incoming, and he was sitting there very nervous. I'm like, if it lands on top of us, we're dead. I'm not even going to worry about that. And their house isn't going to stop at 155. It's not going to save you anywhere. But they live with that. I came in for a couple hours, and they live with that constantly. And they don't know, they go to bed, they don't know if they're going to wake up.
Look, I don't know how the people live, because I was 6 months in Donetsk, and then I went for a month to Oz before I came back. I went back home to Australia for a month, and 2 weeks. My place in Australia is in a really remote place, so I have a lot of silence. Like, I live in nature, and I have a wooden cabin. And 2 weeks after that, I just realized I'm really traumatized after 6 months of shelling. Every time a door slams or something, every time the door slams from the wind, my body goes into that, that thing when the. So after 10 years, man, it's like, I think it's insane. I think it's insane. It's lasting for 10 years. It's one of the longest conflicts, apart from the Gaza, the Palestinian story. It's one of the longest conflicts in modern history, and I really think the people in all the Donbass deserve a break. They really deserve a break.
Which is amazing, because if you listen to the West, we're going to reunify it with Ukraine. Do you really think the people that have been shelled for 10 years by you and your proxies in Ukraine are going to want to ever live with you under the same roof?
Look, what I say after talking with the locals, some of them said to me that 10 years ago, they still felt Ukrainian. They just felt betrayed by their own government. Now nobody feels Ukrainian. It's like, I would say honestly, and I'm a very honest reporter. When Russia is wrong, I say it, or when I think it's wrong. And I would say easily in Donetsk, 97% of the population are 100% pro-Russian, and they don't want to know about Ukraine.
Yep.
They don't wish the destruction of Ukraine. That's also the interesting thing. When I talk to people, even when there's blood in the street, when there's dead body, I just say, what's the story? How is it going to end? He said, look, we need our land, we need our freedom, and we should just talk. We just want Donetsk. We don't want anything else. We need to talk. Ukraine needs to be demilitarized, but they don't say to me like Ukraine needs to be destroyed, because they all have relatives also in Ukraine, so they don't want their relatives dead, of course. Yeah.
Well, when all this started, I remember I had an American acquaintance who told me, I love this. Russia's big. Why don't all these people just pack up and leave and go live in Russia? Like, why should people have been living on that land for 500-600+ years have to give up because some idiots came into power that said you're not the right nationality? Have you run into the same type of
Look,
issue
I can tell
Australia?
I can tell you a few stories about it. Like, there's one woman in a small shop that speaks good English. I usually buy stuff from her in Donetsk. And I asked her once, because she's educated, she can leave if she wants to. You know what I mean? She has the money to leave. And I asked her, why don't you leave? I asked her, why don't you leave? And she said, I'm going to die here rather than leave. There's nobody that's going to make me leave. I go a lot to Preva Plashatka, which is really, it's 2,000 meters from Ukrainian forces. You can hear the light machinery, machine guns. And I asked the people there, why don't you leave? Like, Russia is even offering you sometimes relocation, and they just say they're what we call, because salt of the earth.
Right.
They're not going to leave their land.
Yeah, they're
It's
not.
like there's nothing that's going to make me. I mean, a few of them went, even Russia offered relocation. They went to Tula, they went to different places. After a month, they came back. They said,
Yeah.
we'd rather die on our land than live away from it. So
Yeah.
I think the idea of Russia is big. No, that's just a cop out, you know. You can't make people leave their land, you know.
Exactly. You know, and coming from Americans, which, by the way, why don't you leave and let the Indians have it back then? Nobody's planning on leaving.
Exactly.
You're expecting
Yeah,
other
yeah,
people to leave their
leave.
land that've been there longer than America ever existed.
Yeah, exactly. No, they're not going to leave their land. I think, you know, the West has to stop supporting this conflict. I mean, I'll tell you another thing is there's a lot of tension in the air now. I'm in Crimea at the moment, and Crimea, as the crow flies, is not so far from Zaporozhye.
Right.
You know, like, so the idea of nuclear terrorism now is really, really on everybody's mouth, you know, because Ukraine has done enough insane thing that nobody will put it past them to try and blow up Zaporozhye or Kursk. You know, this is really on the cards. You know, it's like
Yeah.
I'm sad to say it, but from the way I've seen the Zelensky regime act, this is really on the cards. I even personally said to my mate today, let's go and buy some iodine tablets just in case. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, they're insane.
They are. They
The
are.
masters in Washington. Yeah, I mean, look at Lindsey Graham. He was just in Kiev, and he just like, yeah, we gotta fight them, we gotta defeat them, we gotta take over Russia. They're insane.
A combat lawyer of Lindsey Graham. Oh, that
Oh,
John
yeah, yeah,
John
yeah.
McCain's Siamese twin. Yeah. At least McCain actually saw some combat. The only thing that Graham ever had was a paper cut. Oh, scum of the earth. Just
I
absolute
mean,
scum of the earth.
I would invite I would invite Lindsey Graham to the front line. Let's see how he acts after
Uh,
24 hours on the front line.
you wouldn't you wouldn't see him for 20 minutes on the front line. Trust me. Or 20 seconds. That man won't go anywhere near 200 kilometers on the front line. But I mean, you can't spend your ill-gotten
You,
gains if you get blown up.
You know, in old days, in ancient times, it was the leader of the country that stood in front of the forces and was the first
Yeah.
one to be killed. Now they sit in the offices and send the young people to die, you know, and the poor people to die, you know.
Well, the
So
poor people have always been getting whacked, the young people. But you know, on that point that you say that, Peter the Great, who was 7'2" in standard terms, so you know, over well over 2 meters tall. He was a giant of a
yeah,
man,
yeah,
especially when
yeah,
the
yeah.
average height was like 5'4" for the average guy. He would lead his battalions from the front, sword in hand. When they went into combat, when he was leading, he would lead from front. So you got this giant, literal giant, even by the day standards, he's huge, right?
Yeah, yeah,
By those standards,
yeah,
he's
yeah.
just a giant coming at you with his troops, and he's putting himself up front, risking his own life.
Well, I'd like to see Lindsey Graham leading the
Ah,
mercenaries. I would like to see him leading the mercenaries. You know, that's another thing I'd like to share with you. 3 weeks ago, I did an interview with a woman who just came from Tostek, I think you say it, you know, and she had people. So she had a 3-story house, and you know, she was a quite wealthy family, and she had people staying in both her basements. And when the Ukrainians came, she said something really interesting to me. She said the Ukrainian conscripts, they were quite civil. You know, they did not torture anybody or
mhm.
anything like this. But the Ukrainian professional soldiers were quite bad. But the mercenaries killed everybody in her basement. She said all what she heard was screaming. One basement had only women. She heard screaming, 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 screaming like all night. And then she heard shots, and then there was silence. And in the morning, when the Russian soldiers came to rescue her, she asked them to go to the basement, and she said everybody was dead. And she said she heard all the time, hello, come on, hello, come on. She heard that they weren't Russian, you know, and of course she speaks Ukrainian as well. They weren't Russian, they weren't Ukrainian, you know, like because Ukrainians, they speak all Russian or Ukrainian. Most Ukrainian soldiers speak Russian.
Right.
But she just had foreign language, and then the mercenaries killed and raped everybody in her basement, and she said generally the mercenaries are the worst, even worse than the Ukrainian professional soldiers.
Yeah, they're the scum of humanity. And amazingly, again, America is sponsoring again the scum of humanity, just like it sponsored the scum of humanity in Syria, just like it sponsored the scum of humanity in Iraq and so many other nations. And again, it's sponsoring the scum of humanity. Yeah, call me surprised. Color me surprised.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised. You know, I'm really not surprised.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I feel Russia doesn't know. I mean, you would know because you lived in the West, but Russia doesn't really understand how evil the minds of the people they're facing. And I'm not talking about the Ukrainians. I'm not talking the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are Slavs. Most of the Ukrainians, if you really push them to it, they don't want to fight. You know what I mean? If you really, you know, I'm not talking about the Ukrainians. I'm talking about the who is really pulling the
Oh yeah.
strings.
I
You
keep
know?
telling I came back to Russia in 2010. And when I was I was a staff officer in the 18th Airborne Corps G3, which is the operations branch, Dragon Brigade, which is the staff brigade. And a corps is 4 divisions. Really, it's almost 5 divisions because you got lots of separate little units. And 99, we were preparing for war with Russia. And I
Yeah.
told everyone this war's coming. Because it wasn't that they started 99, they just never stopped. They were just prior to that, they were just waiting for Russia to die on its own. And when it didn't, then okay, now we're going to start taking action. Um, and then, nobody wanted to hear it. For God's sakes, nobody wanted to hear it. That this war's coming. My wife said, you've been preparing me for this war for 12 years. I'm like, yeah, I know.
But do you, I know you're interviewing me, but I have a question to ask you.
By all means.
Do you really feel the Russian elite really grasp what they're facing? Like, because because I really feel that Putin all the time feels he's facing human beings who are really have some human value still, but I personally feel that they would blow up a nuclear power plant without blinking an eye, even if it kills Russians, Ukrainians, and damages half of Europe.
In 22, I think the vast majority of the Russian leadership had absolutely no idea what they were facing. None. Since Merkel came out and Hollanday came out and laughed off, haha, Minsk 1, Minsk 2 were just a lie. We're pulling Russia by the nose. And then everything else, they're starting to get a clue. Some realize very well. Zhirinovsky always knew.
Yeah.
Lukashenko
But
knows.
he's dead now.
Yeah, Lukashenko said flat out, there's not going to be any red lines. You hit me, you get everything. And that's the only language. And I've been telling everybody, that's the only damn language the West understands. Either you put the geld under its nose or you put a dagger under its nose. Nothing else. And the old saying goes, once you pay the Danes guild, what do you do about the Danes? They're always going to come back for more. And
I mean, for me, yeah, sorry, yeah.
One last piece. I'll tell you this. I went to Ukraine.ru forum discussing what Ukraine should look like after the war and what we should do. And one of the speakers was Pyotr Tolstoy, who is one of the leading figures in parliament. And they asked him, what does Europe think about Russia? What are they? Oh, they're looking at us like this crazy Eastern European country. I raised my hand, but I never got picked, unfortunately. I was going to correct them. Dear sir, they're not looking at us as Europeans. They're not looking at us as humans. They're looking at us at best as mongoloids, at worst as apes with guns, and nothing more. And they're still not understanding.
I mean, I can tell you about Australian media. They were, I don't remember when, but sometime early in the conflict, they were putting stuff like Russian soldiers are eating Ukrainian babies and all
Oh
kinds of
yeah,
weird.
America too. Oh, yeah.
You know, so I still feel that Russia does not really totally, I haven't internalized what they're really facing, if to
Yep.
say it like, and I also feel like, let's say what's happened in Kursk now. Instead of, yeah, I know it's a really delicate situation because you can't now, there's a lot of civilians now, the Ukrainians are taking basically, using the civilians also as a human shield, so Russia cannot really go gang ho and now and occupy the settlements in Kursk. But you know, just go gang ho somewhere else. Just immediate. There should be immediate ramification.
Absolutely.
And I personally feel that too many red lines have been crossed without real. I mean, there's been a slap in the hand,
Oh
but there
yeah,
hasn't been a real punch. You know, that's
absolutely.
that's my personal opinion. I could be wrong. I'm,
No,
you
no,
know,
you're right. You're right. Yeah, just look at it this way. The first heavy equipment came from which country? It came from Slovakia. Why Slovakia? Because it's small, and if it gets hit, no big deal. And when it didn't get hit back, oh, okay, let's go. And it all went on. You know, you hit Poland on that base that sits right across the border with all that equipment. They may stop to think, how far do we really want to go? But until you do, as you know, they're not going to stop. They're never going to stop unless you chop their nose off. That's the only way they're going to start noticing something's off. And no, I don't think our leadership fully understands what they're dealing with.
and I'd also like to say that so many people are putting their hope in Trump. I wake up, people. Wake up, people. Wake up, people. Don't put your hopes there. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a little bit better than what's happening now, but I wouldn't put my hopes there. Neither Trump nor Biden, they're not really the ones who are pulling the strings anyway. And yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, I wouldn't just because some people reckon the Russian leadership are just playing a waiting game until Trump gets voted in. First of all, he might not get voted in. There's a good chance he won't get voted in.
There's a good chance he may be arrested and sent on his sentencing 18 September. He may be
You
jailed.
know, so yeah.
So that just to start with that.
So it's really good to act in the moment and not wait
Right.
for some illusion that Trump might end it. He might, but I won't. Yeah, I won't bet my money on it.
Look, he's already taken Nikki Haley, Russophobe extreme, neocon extreme. He's already said that she's going to have a position in his cabinet. Plenty of other neocons are going to have positions. I mean, the neocons are on both sides. The Trotskyites are on both sides.
Of course,
They're
of course,
embedded, and it doesn't
of
matter
course,
who the hell the president is.
of course, of course. We know that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And look, they went after Scott Ritter, right? They are now extraditing Kim.com from
Yeah,
New Zealand.
I saw that. I saw that. Yeah,
And they've raided the home of Dimitri Sims, who's a commentator, who's I mean, the man's lived most of his life in the US. He's in academia, and he was on Первый Canal. And he
yeah,
said a few things they didn't like about Ukraine. So now the FBI is raiding his home.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think this is just going to continue expanding out.
yeah. Freedom and liberty. What the West stands for? Freedom and liberty. You know, fighting the evil forces of Russia that everybody here. Well, you know, I've been in Russia now more than 1 year. Sometime I've been critical. I've never faced any problems or any story. Look, I was saying already in 2018, I lectured all over Russia, and I was saying to the Russians, look, the tables are turning. You're more free than what we are. And everybody was laughing at me because most
Oh
of my
yeah,
audience, most of my audience were like liberals and things like this. Then when COVID came, they started, oh, you were right, because when people in Melbourne were locked for 438 days without being able to leave their home, they were saying, maybe you weren't so wrong, I mean, nowhere is a perfect democracy. Russia is not a perfect democracy, but in the balance of things, I know there's more freedom in Russia than now in Europe or Australia or the United States.
I don't even believe in democracy. I'm a monarchist. I believe in an elected parliament, a constitutional monarchy, but democracy, actually, if you look at democracy, what did the founding fathers of the US say about democracy? The only thing more bloody than democracy's than the reign of democracy is its end. Democracy is mob rule, or sometimes a minority mob rule. I mean, BLM there's your democracy. It's the street.
Yeah,
Pitchforks. It's we're gonna take whatever we want from you because we have the power right now, and that's what's happening in the West. Let me ask you this. I read this, but I'm not sure if it's a meme or if it's actual truth. I read that in Australia they can now force you to take the shots physically. They can pin you down and make you take the shots. Is that true?
No, it's not. It's not really
Okay.
true. But they still can. They can still limit your. Let's say in some occupations and things like this, they can still like fire you or sack you or something like this. But no, they cannot force you. As far as I know, like, I'm in touch with Australia every day,
Mhm.
so but it's bad. It's bad anyway, man. It's like you can't say anything. If you in Australia, if you say just a mild opinion about the gender story, let's say, and then and I can't even say it on your show what I feel, because if somebody types it and sends it, it's like, oh, that it's hate speech. Only if you say your opinion about what you feel is godly or ungodly, let's say, so no, it's there's no freedom of speech, absolutely, because I mean, we don't have to agree on everything, but we
Well, we
all have,
shouldn't agree on everything.
but we should be able to voice our opinions.
Right.
But you can't voice your opinion in Australia, Canada, United
UK.
Kingdom.
Yeah.
Maybe in the US it's a bit of different, because there's a Bill of Rights and stuff like this. So it's a slightly
Yeah.
it's a slightly bit different, I mean, look what's happening in the United Kingdom now. Like you can get arrested for liking a social media post.
Speaking of which, the first guy from the riots who wasn't being violent got his sentence. The guy was standing across from the police and yelling at them. 27 months.
Yeah, you see?
Almost 2.5 years. For what? That's insane.
I mean, there's no freedom. And why do you think they got rid of also, for instance? Because he dared speak against the forces of Zion. Not even because he dared call the Israeli government for what they are. You know what I mean? It's like, it wasn't even about Russia or Ukraine or anything like this, So there's absolutely no freedom of speech. There's nothing. We're moving to somewhere new. I don't know where we're moving to. I don't know where the West is heading to, because I don't know what's going to happen after they lose the Ukraine war, where they're going to take it, So, yeah.
I think they're going to take it into World War III, at least in Europe. Of course, if the Middle East doesn't blow up before that and suck that is all of us into that.
Well, yeah, sorry.
I was gonna say, I've got from my father's side, I've got some relatives in Israel,
Yeah,
and you look at them. First of all, they all moved in the head when 7 October started. There were all these
yeah,
half of them are liberal, and then they became bloodthirsty. Now
yeah.
they're all sitting there in fear because they know what's coming. They know the war that's coming. They may win, but there's not going to be an Israel left. Just like there may not be an Iran left, but there's not going to be an Israel left. And they've got a maniac called Netanyahu who he's got his mission, and hell or high water, he's going to have that war.
Well, look, the way I look at it, look how hypocritical the West is.
Oh, yeah.
If Russia kills two Ukrainians in Kiev and collateral damage when they hit a military target, but 2 or 3 civilians died, the whole West is Russia butchers the thing like this. Netanyahu is killing every single day
Oh,
about
yeah.
100 Palestinians. 70% of them are women and children. Where are you? And it's not collateral damage. He's
Oh.
targeting their, when have you seen Russia drop 1-ton bombs on civilian buildings? It's like it doesn't happen. You know what I
It
mean?
doesn't.
There has been situations where 2 or 3 civilians were killed. They were in the wrong place in the wrong time. I'm not saying they weren't, but Netanyahu every single day is targeting
Oh.
civilians. No, I mean it's all hypocritical. It's like I think Russia needs to wake up, call the shots. Uh, uh, let's remember that Russia has 80% of the world behind it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the illusion of the West, but the West only accounts for 18% of the world's population. So Russia has 80% of the of the world behind it. Africa, Asia, South America, everybody's behind Russia, so it's about time Russia realizes it. And there's a danger even on Russia's side to allow this to last for too long. That's what I feel.
Absolutely. And the West is gearing up industrially. And that is a danger in that too. And realistically, about 35–40% of the Russian military is involved in Ukraine. There's enough to crush Ukraine that isn't being used. And we need to get this
Yeah,
over.
I know. There's still a lot of troops sitting, waiting to be sent to the front line. I know that. Yeah.
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 Guys have been sitting there for half a year waiting, and they're held in reserve. And I think it's because they're afraid to make big grand moves because the West will be afraid and the West will rush in. But it's really the exact opposite. And I keep telling them it's the exact opposite. Little moves only encourages them to do more. Big grand moves, and they're going to be afraid and they won't go in.
Look, we've had the discussion, me and you, even when we met in Moscow.
Yeah.
The West, Russia needs to understand what it's facing, and when it truly understands what it's facing, it will be gloves off and let's finish it now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
There won't be any more pussyfooting around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I see we're coming to the end soon, so I'd
Right,
just like
right.
to mention, if you don't mind, if people also want to follow me in my work, it's
By all means, by all means.
Telegram at Cafe Revolution. You can follow my work, and of course follow Stanislav's work. And yeah, we're here. It's different commentary because both of us are here and we feel the pulse of the country here. So it's a different commentary to what you hear from admittedly pro-Russian commentators, but when you're overseas, it's a different, you don't feel it, like we're breathing it every day, you know what I mean? I'm talking with people, even here in Crimea, I'm walking on the street interviewing people. What do you feel? Are you afraid? It's like I'm all the time gauging what the population is feeling. And I must say that the population is a bit fearing what will happen if the nuclear power stations are attacked.
And just so before we leave,
Yeah.
the majority of the wind at this time of year is north by northwest. So if you're sitting in Poland, you're sitting in Denmark, you're sitting in northern Germany, you're sitting in the UK, in Scotland, in the Scandinavian countries, you're screwed. If this goes up, you're screwed. It's going to be on your head that the fallout's coming. So think about that. Your leaders.
Yeah, it's suicide. It's really collective suicide.
Yeah. Europe, I mean, one cloud goes over Europe, it hits. I mean, we're Europe, but we've got huge amounts of land. We're dispersed. The rest of Europe is scrunched into a very small geographic area. That cloud goes over, it's going to hit third of Europe, half of Europe's population, easily.
You've actually calmed me down now because I'm in Crimea. If it goes north, we're okay.